A pregnant woman lies bleeding on a marble floor while her husband laughs with another woman. A tiny girl dials for help as her mother's life slips away. A courtroom erupts as secrets are exposed. A foundation rises from the ashes of tragedy. When Chioma Okafor married the love of her life, she thought she'd found her happily ever after in the glittering towers of Lagos. But on one horrific night, the man who vowed to protect her became the monster who nearly destroyed her. All because of a woman who had slithered into their home like a venomous snake. What followed was a battle that would shake the foundations of Nigeria's elite, expose corruption at the highest levels, and transform a broken housewife into a warrior who refused to be silenced. This is the story of betrayal, survival, and a mother's fight to reclaim everything that was stolen from her. Welcome to K-Smart Mythic Tales, where we bring you the most gripping African family dramas that will leave you breathless. Thank you for your incredible support. You are the reason we keep bringing these powerful stories to life. Before we dive into the story, kindly subscribe, drop a comment below, and tell us where you are watching from. Now let's get into this explosive story of love, betrayal, and redemption that will keep you on the edge of your seat until the very last word. The sound of glass shattering against the marble floor echoed through the luxurious sitting room like a gunshot. Chioma Okafor stumbled backward, her 6 months pregnant belly visible beneath her flowing dress, one hand instinctively protecting her unborn child while the other reached for the wall to steady herself. Blood trickled from a cut above her eyebrow where the crystal vase had grazed her temple. "Chidi, please," she gasped, her voice breaking. "The baby." "I don't care about that bastard," Chidi Okafor roared, his eyes wild with rage and alcohol. His expensive designer shirt was unbuttoned, his tie hanging loosely around his neck. He looked nothing like the respected investment banker who smiled from billboards across Lagos. "You trapped me with this pregnancy, Chioma. You knew I didn't want another child." Behind him, draped across the leather sofa like a serpent in paradise, sat Ngozi Adelik, sleek, beautiful, and utterly unmoved by the violence unfolding before her. Her long Brazilian weave cascaded over her shoulders as she examined her perfectly manicured nails, a small smile playing at the corners of her glossy lips. She wore one of Chioma's silk robes, a deliberate insult that made the pregnant woman's stomach turn. "Chidi, I'm your wife," Chioma pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "We've been married for 8 years. We have Kamsi upstairs. Don't you dare bring my daughter into this." Chidi advanced on her, his fist clenched. "You're nothing but a burden, Chioma. A village girl who got lucky when I married you. Look at you, fat, useless, always crying." Ngozi laughed, a cold, tinkling sound. "Baby, come back to bed. Don't waste your energy on her." Something in Chioma snapped. Despite the fear coursing through her veins, despite the pain throbbing in her head, she straightened her spine. "Get out of my house, Ngozi. This is still my home." The slap came so fast Chioma didn't see it coming. Chidi's open palm connected with her cheek with such force that she spun and fell, her hip hitting the corner of the coffee table. Pain exploded through her abdomen, sharp and terrifying. She cried out, clutching her stomach as wetness spread between her legs. "Chidi, the baby, something's wrong." But Chidi had already turned away, returning to Ngozi's embrace on the sofa. "Stop being dramatic, Chioma. You're always looking for attention." Chioma tried to stand but couldn't. The pain was overwhelming, and the wetness, blood, she realized with horror, was pooling beneath her. "Please," she whispered. "Call an ambulance. Please. Chidi. Our baby." "Ugh, Chidi, she's making a mess of your expensive rug," Ngozi complained, wrinkling her nose. "Can't you just call her mother or something to come get her?" Through the haze of pain, Chioma heard footsteps on the stairs. 7-year-old Kamsi appeared in her pink nightgown, her eyes wide with terror. "Mama? Papa, why is Mama bleeding?" "Kamsi, baby, go back to your room," Chioma managed to say, trying to smile through her tears. But the little girl had already seen too much. Her father's cold indifference, the strange woman on their sofa, her mother collapsed on the floor in a pool of blood. Kamsi ran to the phone on the side table and dialed the number she'd been taught for emergencies. "Hello? My mama is hurt. There's blood everywhere. Please help." As consciousness began to slip away, Chioma heard sirens in the distance. She thought of the baby growing inside her, of Kamsi's terrified face, of the man she'd loved who had become a monster. And she made a decision that would change everything. If she survived this night, she would never return to this house. If she survived, Chidi Okafor would learn what it meant to lose everything. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Ngozi whispering something in Chidi's ear, and both of them laughing while their daughter screamed for help. The harsh fluorescent lights of Lagos University Teaching Hospital burned into Chioma's eyes as she drifted in and out of consciousness. Voices swirled around her. Urgent, professional, afraid. BP dropping. We're losing the baby. Get her to surgery now. Somewhere in the chaos, she heard her sister Adi's voice, shrill with panic. Where is that useless husband of hers? Where is Chidi? The answer, Chioma knew even through her delirium, was that he wasn't coming. He was probably still at home with Ngozi, sleeping peacefully while his wife fought for her life and the life of their unborn child. When Chioma finally woke, it was to silence. The kind of silence that speaks louder than words. Her hand moved instinctively to her belly and found it flatter, emptier. The cry that tore from her throat was primal, animal. My baby. Where's my baby? Adiz was at her bedside instantly, tears streaming down her face. At 35, Adiz had always been the stronger sister, the one who'd made it as a successful lawyer in Abuja before returning to Lagos. But now she looked broken. Chi, she whispered, using the childhood nickname. I'm so sorry. They couldn't save him. It was a boy. You had a son. The world tilted. Chioma felt as if she were falling through space, through time, through the floor of the hospital and into some dark abyss where mothers go when they lose their children. No. No. The doctor said the trauma to your abdomen, the fall. There was internal bleeding. They tried everything. Chioma's mother, Mama Nkechi, stood at the foot of the bed, her face a mask of fury and grief. She was a traditional woman, a trader at Balagan Market who had raised 5 children alone after her husband's death. She'd never approved of Chidi, had warned Chioma that Lagos men from wealthy families looked down on village girls. That man killed your son, Mama Nkechi said, her voice low and dangerous. He killed my grandson. And he will answer for it. Mama, please, Adiz cautioned. Not now. But Mama Nkechi was not to be silenced. Where is he at? 3 days. Chioma has been in this hospital. 3 days. And your husband has not come even once. Not once. But his mother, that witch, she came yesterday. Chioma's blood ran cold. Mrs. Okafor was here? Adiz nodded grimly. She came with papers. Divorce papers. Can you imagine? Her daughter-in-law almost dies, loses her grandchild, and she brings divorce papers. She said terrible things, Mama Nkechi continued, her voice shaking. She said you must have done something to provoke Chidi. That good men don't hit their wives unless the wife is useless. She said the baby probably wasn't even his. Mama, enough. Adiz cut in. Chi needs to rest. But Chioma was already sitting up, despite the pain that screamed through her body. What did the papers say? Adiz hesitated. Chidi wants everything. The house, the cars, the joint accounts. He's claiming you were unfaithful and that Kamsi might not even be his daughter. Mrs. Okafor has already hired the best lawyers in Lagos. And Kamsi? Chioma's voice cracked. Where is my daughter? The look on Adiz's face told her everything. Mrs. Okafor took her. She said it wasn't proper for a child to see her mother in this state. She said they're protecting Kamsi from you. The rage that filled Chioma was unlike anything she'd ever felt. It burned away the grief, the pain, the weakness. They had taken her son's life. Now they were trying to take her daughter. Help me up, she commanded. Chi, you can't. I said help me up. With Adiz's support, Chioma managed to stand, though every movement felt like knives cutting through her abdomen. She looked at herself in the small mirror above the sink. Hollow-eyed, bruised, bandaged. She looked like a ghost. Good. Let them see what they'd made of her. Take me home, she said. To our house in Surulere. Not the Ikoyi house. I need to think. As they prepared to leave, a nurse rushed in with a manila envelope. Mrs. Okafor? This was just delivered for you. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. Chidi and Ngozi at restaurants. Chidi and Ngozi on vacation in Dubai. Chidi and Ngozi at the house in Ikoyi, in Chioma's bed, wearing Chioma's wedding ring on a chain around her neck. And a note, in Ngozi's handwriting, he was never really yours. Some women are born to be wives. Others are born to be replaced. Thanks for keeping the bed warm. Chioma stared at the photos, her hands trembling. Then slowly, she began to smile. A cold, determined smile that made Adiz step back. Chi? What are you thinking? I'm thinking, Chioma said softly, that Chidi Okafor has no idea who he married. He thinks I'm a weak village girl? He's about to learn what women from Enugu are really made of. She tucked the photos into her bag. And I'm thinking that Ngozi Adel-Eek should have done her research before she decided to destroy my family. Because before I married Chidi, before I became a housewife, I was someone else entirely. What do you mean? Mama Nkechi asked. Chioma's smile widened. It means I have secrets too. And it's time everyone learned them. The small flat in Surulere was nothing like the mansion in Ikoyi. Here, the walls were thin, the furniture second-hand, the air thick with the smell of jollof rice and fried plantains from neighboring apartments. But it was Chioma's childhood home, the place where she'd grown up with her siblings, and it felt safer than anywhere else in Lagos. Adiz helped Chioma settle on the worn sofa while Mama Nkechi busied herself in the kitchen, preparing pepper soup despite Chioma's protests that she wasn't hungry. But Chioma knew her mother's love language was food, and right now, she needed every bit of love she could get. Tell us, Adiz said, sitting cross-legged on the floor beside her sister. What secrets were you talking about at the hospital? Chioma was silent for a long moment, staring at her hands. These hands had once been different. Tougher, more calloused. These hands had once held more than just a baby or a husband's affection. Before I met Chidi, she began slowly, I wasn't just a student at the University of Lagos. I was working part-time at a law firm, Adeyemi and Associates. Do you remember them? Adiz's eyes widened. The firm that handled the Okoro corruption case? The one that brought down 3 senators. Yes. I was a paralegal there. I handled documents, I filed papers, I sat in on meetings. Chioma's voice grew stronger. And I learned things. I saw things. Including how wealthy men like Chidi hide their money. Mama Nkechi emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her wrapper. What are you saying, Chioma? I'm saying that when Chidi and I married, I wasn't the naive village girl he thought I was. I knew he came from old money. Money that wasn't always clean. His father, Chief Okafor, built his empire on government contracts that weren't entirely legal. And Chidi inherited not just the wealth, but the secrets. She pulled out her phone. Miraculously, Adiz had retrieved it from the Ikoyi house along with some of her clothes. Before the attack, before everything fell apart, I'd already started noticing things. Money disappearing from our joint accounts. Chidi being secretive about his business trips. I thought it was just the affair, but it was more than that. Adiz leaned forward. What do you mean? I mean that Chidi has been laundering money through his investment firm. Millions of naira, possibly dollars too. He's been cooking the books, creating fake companies, moving money offshore. And I have proof. The room fell silent except for the sound of traffic outside and the distant call to prayer from a nearby mosque. How? Adiz whispered. Because I never stopped being that paralegal. Even after I became a housewife, even after I had Kamsi, I kept my skills sharp. I had access to Chidi's computer, his files. I made copies of everything. Bank statements, emails, contracts. I stored them in the cloud under a fake name. Chioma's hands shook as she pulled up the files on her phone. I thought I might need them for a divorce someday, if things got bad. I never thought he'd. Her voice broke. Mama Nkechi rushed to embrace her daughter, and for a moment, Chioma let herself be small again, let herself be held. But now, she continued when she could speak again, now I'm going to use them. Not just to win the divorce. To destroy him. To take everything he has, the way he took my son from me. Adiz's lawyer brain was already working. Chi, this is dangerous. If Chidi is really involved in money laundering, there are powerful people protecting him. You could get hurt. Worse than you already have been. I don't care anymore, Chioma said flatly. They've already taken everything that matters. But they won't take Kamsi. I'll burn down his entire empire if that's what it takes to get my daughter back. A knock at the door made all 3 women freeze. Mama Nkechi moved to answer it, peering through the peephole first. It's a man. Yang. He says he's from the church. Chioma's heart sank. She'd stopped attending church months ago, unable to bear the pitying looks from the congregation who knew about Chidi's affair but said nothing. I don't want to see anyone from. Please, the voice called through the door. My name is Ao Mensa. I'm not from your church. I'm from the EFCC, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. And I think you and I need to talk about your husband. The three women exchanged glances. Adiz moved to the door and opened it slowly, revealing a man in his early 30s, dressed in a simple shirt and jeans, holding an EFCC identification card. Mrs. Okafor, Ao said gently, his Ghanaian accent soft and musical. I know you've been through hell. I know what your husband did to you. It's been all over the news. The blogs, the gossip pages. And I'm truly sorry for your loss. What do you want? Chioma asked warily. Ao stepped inside, glancing around the small flat. I want the same thing you want. I want to bring Chidi Okafor down. We've been investigating him for 2 years, but we can't get past his lawyers and his father's connections. Everything is too clean, too protected. He looked directly at Chioma. But you're his wife. You had access. And I'm betting you're smart enough to have kept records. Chioma studied him carefully. His eyes were kind but determined. She recognized that look. She'd seen it in the mirror just hours ago. Why should I trust you? She asked. Because I'm not asking you to trust me, Ao replied. I'm asking you to trust yourself. You want your daughter back? You want justice for your son? You want to make sure Chidi Okafor never hurts another woman the way he hurt you? Then we work together. He placed a business card on the coffee table. Think about it. But don't think too long. Chidi's lawyers are already moving to freeze your assets, to paint you as an unfit mother. Mrs. Okafor is spreading rumors that you're mentally unstable. In a week, maybe less, you won't have any power left at all. As Ao turned to leave, he paused. One more thing. That woman, Ngozi Adelik? She's not just his mistress. She's been convicted of fraud before, under a different name. She targets wealthy men, marries them, and takes everything. Chidi's not her first victim. But if we move fast, he could be her last. After he left, the three women sat in stunned silence. Finally, Mama Nkechi spoke. Do it. Whatever you must do, Chioma, do it. Get our Kamsi back. And make that man pay. Chioma picked up the business card. Her decision made. But as she reached for her phone to call Ao back, it buzzed with an incoming message. From Chidi, sign the divorce papers and give up custody quietly, and I'll let you see Kamsi once a month. Fight me, and you'll never see her again. You have 24 hours to decide. And attached was a video of Kamsi, crying in Mrs. Okafor's house, calling for her mama. Chioma's hands clenched around the phone so hard her knuckles turned white. 24 hours. They'd given her 24 hours to surrender her daughter forever. They just made a terrible mistake. Ao Mensa's office at the EFCC headquarters in Ikoyi was cramped and cluttered with files. A stark contrast to the sleek corporate spaces Chioma had grown accustomed to during her marriage. But there was an energy here, a sense of purpose that made her sit up straighter despite the pain still radiating through her healing body. These are remarkable, Ao said, scrolling through the documents Chioma had provided on a secure laptop. His colleague, a sharp-eyed woman named Detective Amara Nwosu, stood behind him, her expression growing more intense with each page. Bank transfers to shell companies in the Cayman Islands, Amara muttered. Falsified contracts with the Ministry of Works. Kickbacks from construction deals. Jesus Christ, Mrs. Okafor, your husband has been running a criminal empire. And you have it all documented, Ao added, shaking his head in amazement. Transaction records, emails, even voice recordings? How did you manage this without him knowing? Chioma's smile was bitter. Because he thought I was stupid. Chidi never believed a village girl from Enugu could understand high finance. He'd leave his laptop open, take calls on speaker when I was in the room. He never imagined I was listening, learning, recording. There's enough here to put him away for 20 years, Ao said. Maybe more. But there's a problem. Chioma's heart sank. What? Amara pulled up another file. The problem is timing. Chidi's lawyers filed an emergency motion this morning claiming you're mentally unstable and a danger to your daughter. They have a psychiatrist, one his mother paid for, willing to testify that you're suffering from postpartum psychosis and made threats against Kamsi. That's insane. I never. We know. Ao interrupted gently. But perception matters in court. And right now, Chidi is painting you as an unhinged woman who lost her baby and can't accept reality. His mother has already started spreading stories in your old church, your old neighborhood. They're destroying your reputation before we can even file charges against him. Chioma felt the walls closing in. This was exactly what Chidi wanted, to isolate her, to make her seem crazy, to take away the one thing she had left. So what do I do? We go public, Amara said firmly. We take this story to the media before they can control the narrative. We show Lagos who Chidi Okafor really is. But the case, Ao started, will be stronger if we have public support, Amara finished. Mrs. Okafor, do you trust us? Chioma thought of Kamsi's tear-stained face in that video. She thought of her son, the baby boy she'd never held, never named. She thought of every bruise Chidi had given her, every insult, every moment of humiliation. Yes, she said. I trust you. What do we do? The press conference was held at the EFCC headquarters 2 days later. Adiz had coached Chioma on what to say, how to present herself. Don't cry, she'd instructed. Be strong, be clear. Let the facts speak for themselves. But when Chioma sat at that table, facing a room full of journalists and cameras, with Ao and Amara flanking her, the tears came anyway. My name is Chioma Okafor, she began, her voice shaking but growing stronger with each word. 3 weeks ago, my husband, Chidi Okafor, assaulted me while I was 6 months pregnant. He pushed me, he hit me, and I lost our son because of his violence. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled frantically. In the back of the room, Chioma could see her mother and Adiz, both crying but standing tall. But that's not why I'm here today. I'm here because my husband is not just an abuser. He's a criminal. 4 years, he has been stealing money from the Nigerian people through fraudulent government contracts. He has laundered millions of naira through fake companies. And I have proof of all of it. She held up a flash drive. Everything is on here. Bank records, emails, recordings. The EFCC has verified it all. My husband belongs in prison. A reporter shouted from the crowd. Mrs. Okafor, your husband's lawyers say you're mentally ill. They say you're making this up for revenge. Then let them explain these, Chioma said calmly, as Ao projected images on the screen behind her. Bank statements, incriminating emails, photos of Chidi meeting with known corrupt officials. Another reporter. What about his mistress, Ngozi Adelik? Is it true she was there when you were attacked? Chioma's jaw tightened. Yes. Ngozi Adelik was in my home, wearing my clothes, laughing while I bled on the floor. But what Chidi doesn't know is that Ngozi isn't who she claims to be. Amara stood, taking over. Ngozi Adelik is actually Ngozi Ekwensi, a convicted fraudster who has scammed 3 wealthy men in the past 5 years. She targets men with money and political connections, seduces them, and then systematically destroys their families while stealing their assets. Chidi Okafor is her latest victim, though I have little sympathy for him. The room erupted in chaos. Questions flew from every direction. But Chioma just sat there, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. She'd done it. She'd told the truth. As the press conference ended and Ao escorted her out through a side door, her phone buzzed. It was a number she didn't recognize. Don't answer it, Ao warned. But Chioma's instinct told her to. Hello. You stupid bitch. It was Ngozi, her voice no longer smooth and seductive but sharp with fury. Do you have any idea what you've just done? You've declared war on people you can't even imagine. Chidi's father has connections that reach the highest levels of government. They will crush you. Let them try, Chioma said coldly. I've already lost everything that matters. I have nothing left to lose except my daughter, and I will burn this entire city down before I let you people keep her from me. Your daughter. Ngozi laughed, but there was an edge of panic in it. Kamsi isn't even at Mrs. Okafor's house anymore. She's been taken somewhere safe, somewhere you'll never find her. Give up now, Chioma. Sign the papers. Walk away. Or you'll regret it. The line went dead. Chioma stood frozen in the hallway, Ao's concerned face swimming in her vision. They've taken Kamsi somewhere. She's not at Mrs. Okafor's house. We'll find her, Ao promised. But Chioma, if they've hidden her, this just became a kidnapping case. We need to move fast. But before they could formulate a plan, Amara burst through the doors, her face pale. We have a problem. A big one. Chidi just held his own press conference. He's claiming that Chioma is the one who's been stealing from his accounts, that she framed him, and that he has proof she's been planning this for months. His lawyers are filing charges against her for fraud, defamation, and conspiracy. Chioma felt the ground shift beneath her feet. But that's impossible. All the evidence has been verified by a forensic accountant his father hired, Amara said grimly. They're claiming the documents were fabricated, that you planted the emails. Mrs. Okafor is telling anyone who'll listen that you're a gold digger who married her son for money, and is now trying to destroy him out of spite. And it's working, Ao added, showing Chioma his phone. Social media was already exploding with opinions. Half of Lagos believed Chioma's story. The other half believed she was a bitter, vengeful woman who'd lost her mind. The hashtag justice for Chioma was trending. But so was hashtag lying Chioma. What do we do now? Chioma whispered. Ao and Amara exchanged a glance. Then Amara spoke, her voice hard as steel. Now? Now we find your daughter. And we prepare for the fight of your life. The safe house was a modest compound in Lekki Phase 1, provided by a women's rights organization that Amara had connections with. Chioma sat on the edge of a narrow bed, staring at her phone as the news coverage continued to spiral. Her face was everywhere. On television, in newspapers, across social media. Some called her a hero. Others called her a liar, a homewrecker, a woman scorned. But all she could think about was Kamsi. Where was her baby girl? Was she scared? Did she think her mama had abandoned her? A knock on the door made her jump. Adiz entered, carrying food that Chioma knew she wouldn't eat. Chi, you need to rest. Ao's team is doing everything they can. It's been 4 days, Ada, Chioma interrupted. 4 days and no sign of her. What if they've taken her out of the country? What if I never see her again? Don't think like that, Adiz said firmly. But even her voice wavered. Another knock. This one urgent. Ao rushed in. His face flushed with excitement. We found her. We found Kamsi. Chioma shot to her feet, ignoring the pain that still plagued her body. Where? Is she okay? She's at a private school in Abuja, a boarding school called Greenfield Academy. Mrs. Okafor enrolled her under a fake name, claiming she was her granddaughter who needed protection from an unstable parent. That witch, Chioma breathed. When can I see her? That's the complicated part, Amara said, entering behind Ao. We can't just storm in and take her. Legally, Chidi still has custody rights, and Mrs. Okafor is listed as a legal guardian in the emergency motion. If we take Kamsi without a court order, they'll arrest you for kidnapping. Chioma felt her world crumbling again. So what do I do? Just leave her there. No, Ao said. We go to court. Tomorrow. We've filed an emergency motion for custody based on child endangerment. Judge Adebayo is hearing the case. She's tough but fair. If we can prove that Chidi and his family are a danger to Kamsi, she'll grant you temporary custody. But we need more than just the assault, Amara added. We need to show that keeping Kamsi from you is psychologically damaging. And we need to counter every lie they've told about you. I can do that, said a voice from the doorway. Everyone turned to see a woman in her 50s, elegant in traditional Yoruba attire, her head wrapped in a colorful gele. Chioma recognized her immediately. Pastor Funmilayo Adeyemi from Redemption Grace Church, the church she and Chidi had attended for years. Pastor Funmi, Chioma whispered. What are you doing here? The pastor entered the room, her face grave but determined. I'm here to testify on your behalf, my daughter. I'm here to tell the court the truth about Chidi Okafor. She sat down heavily, as if carrying a great burden. For months, I kept quiet. I told myself it wasn't my place to interfere in your marriage. But when I heard about what happened, about the baby you lost, I couldn't stay silent anymore. What truth? Adiz asked. Pastor Funmi looked at Chioma. Chidi came to me 6 months ago for counseling. He told me he wanted to divorce you because you'd become boring and too religious. He said Ngozi made him feel young again. I tried to counsel him, to remind him of his vows. Do you know what he said? Chioma shook her head, tears streaming down her face. He said, I can buy my way out of any vow. I can buy new wives, new families. The only thing money can't buy is time, and I'm not wasting any more of it on Chioma. He laughed when he said it. Laughed. The room was silent except for Chioma's quiet sobs. But that's not all, Pastor Funmi continued. 2 weeks before the assault, Mrs. Okafor came to see me. She asked if I would testify in court that you were a bad mother, that you neglected Kamsi, that you were mentally unstable. She offered me money. A lot of money to say these things. What did you do? Ao asked. I threw her out of my office, Pastor Funmi said simply. And I've been praying ever since about whether to come forward. When I saw your press conference, Chioma, I knew what I had to do. I recorded my conversations with both Chidi and his mother. I have evidence that they planned to destroy you long before that night. She pulled out her phone. It's all here. Their conspiracy to paint you as unfit, their plans to take Kamsi, even Mrs. Okafor discussing how to hide Chidi's money from the EFCC. I know it was wrong to record without their knowledge, but the spirit told me I would need this evidence someday. Amara was already on her feet. Pastor Adeyemi, are you willing to testify in court tomorrow? I am, the pastor said. And so are 12 other members of our congregation who witnessed Chidi's abuse and cruelty over the years. They're ready to tell the truth, no matter what it costs them. Chioma couldn't speak. She simply stood and embraced the woman who had just given her hope when she had none left. The courtroom was packed. On one side sat Chidi's legal team, 5 lawyers in expensive suits, led by the infamous SAN, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Bodejayi, who had never lost a custody case. Behind them sat Mrs. Okafor, dripping in gold jewelry, her face a mask of righteous indignation. And beside her, to Chioma's shock, sat Ngozi, demure in a modest dress, playing the role of concerned stepmother-to-be. On Chioma's side sat Adiz, Ao, Amara, Pastor Funmi, and a dozen church members. Her mother couldn't attend, she'd collapsed from stress the night before and was in the hospital, but she'd sent a message, fight for our Kamsi. Don't let them win. Judge Adebayo was a formidable woman in her 60s, known for her sharp tongue and intolerance for lies. She surveyed the courtroom with eagle eyes before banging her gavel. This is an emergency custody hearing in the matter of Kamsi Okafor. Mr. Ajayi, present your case. Bode Ajayi stood, his voice smooth as silk. Your Honor, this is a tragic case of a woman who has suffered greatly and in her suffering, has lost touch with reality. My client, Chidi Okafor, is a respected businessman who made a terrible mistake. He had an affair. But that affair does not make him an unfit father. He pulled up images on a screen. Chioma looking disheveled at the hospital, Chioma screaming at the press conference, carefully edited clips that made her appear unstable. Mrs. Chioma Okafor has accused my client of assault, of fraud, of destroying their family. But where is the proof? The medical reports show she fell. There were no witnesses to any assault except her biased family members. That's a lie. Chioma burst out, but Adiz squeezed her hand in warning. As for the fraud allegations, Ajayi continued, our forensic accountants have proven that all of Mr. Okafor's business dealings are legitimate. What Mrs. Okafor calls evidence is nothing more than fabricated documents created by a bitter, vindictive woman who wants revenge. He paused for effect. But most concerning, Your Honor, is Mrs. Okafor's mental state. She has made wild accusations not just against my client, but against Miss Ngozi Adelik, a respectable businesswoman who has only tried to help this family. Mrs. Okafor has threatened violence, has shown signs of postpartum psychosis. Objection. Adiz was on her feet. There is no medical diagnosis of postpartum psychosis. The only doctor who made that claim was paid by the defense. Judge Adebayo's eyes narrowed. Sustained. Mr. Ajayi, stick to facts, not speculation. But Ajayi pressed on. The fact, Your Honor, is that Kamsi Okafor is terrified of her mother right now. She has told her grandmother that her mother has been acting strangely, saying frightening things. For the child's safety and well-being, custody must remain with her father. When Adiz stood to present Chioma's case, the atmosphere in the room shifted. She called witness after witness. Church members who testified to Chidi's verbal abuse, neighbors who had heard arguments, a domestic worker who had seen bruises on Chioma's arms long before the fatal night. But it was Pastor Funmi's testimony that changed everything. I present to the court recorded conversations with both Mr. Chidi Okafor and Mrs. Okafor Sr., she said, her voice ringing with authority. In these recordings, you will hear them discuss their plans to destroy Mrs. Chioma Okafor's reputation, to hide Mr. Okafor's assets, and to ensure she never sees her daughter again, not out of concern for the child, but out of pure malice. As the recordings played, the courtroom fell silent. Chidi's voice arrogant and cruel. I can buy my way out of any vow. Mrs. Okafor's voice, cold and calculating. We need to make sure everyone believes she's crazy. Once we have that established, we can do whatever we want with Kamsi. Judge Adebayo's face grew harder with each word. When the recordings ended, she looked directly at Chidi. Mr. Okafor, stand up. Chidi rose slowly, his confident demeanor cracking. I have heard enough, Judge Adebayo said. Emergency custody of Kamsi Okafor is granted to her mother, Chioma Okafor, effective immediately. Mrs. Okafor Sr., you are hereby barred from any contact with the child until a full investigation is complete. Mr. Okafor, you will have supervised visitation only, pending the outcome of the EFCC investigation into your business practices. The courtroom erupted. Mrs. Okafor screamed protests. Ajayi scrambled to object. But Judge Adebayo's gavel silenced them all. Furthermore, she continued, I am ordering a full psychiatric evaluation, not of Mrs. Chioma Okafor, but of Mr. Chidi Okafor. Any man who would assault his pregnant wife, mock her suffering, and conspire to take her child needs to be evaluated for fitness as a parent. She looked at Chioma. Mrs. Okafor, I am sorry for what you've endured. Go get your daughter. Bring her home. As Chioma collapsed into Adiz's arms, sobbing with relief, she caught sight of Chidi across the courtroom. For the first time since this nightmare began, he looked afraid. And standing behind him, Ngozi's face was a mask of barely concealed rage. The battle was won. But Chioma knew the war was far from over. The drive to Abuja took 6 hours, but to Chioma, it felt like an eternity. Ayo had insisted on accompanying her, along with 2 EFCC agents and Adiz. They'd left immediately after the court hearing, not wanting to give Mrs. Okafor or Chidi any opportunity to interfere. Greenfield Academy sat on sprawling grounds outside Abuja, a prestigious institution where Nigeria's elite sent their children. The principal, Mrs. Okeke, met them at the gate, the court order clutched in Chioma's trembling hands. Mrs. Okafor, the principal said carefully, your daughter has been troubled since she arrived. She cries for you constantly. Mrs. Okafor Sr. told us you were dangerous, but I must say, I had my doubts. Where is she? Chioma asked, her voice breaking. In the dormitory. I'll take you to her. They walked through manicured gardens and past modern buildings until they reached a residence hall. And there, in a small room with 2 beds and a window overlooking a playground, sat Kamsi. She was thinner than Chioma remembered, her face gaunt. She sat on the bed clutching a photograph of Chioma, Chidi, and herself, taken on her last birthday. When she looked up and saw her mother in the doorway, her face crumpled. Mama. Baby. My baby. Chioma crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her daughter into her arms. Kamsi clung to her, sobbing so hard her small body shook. Grandma said you didn't want me anymore. She said you were sick and you hated me because I reminded you of Papa. She said. Shoo. Baby. None of that is true. None of it. I have been fighting to get to you every single day. I love you more than anything in this world. But the baby. Papa said you lost the baby because of me. He said I made you fall. Chioma pulled back, looking into her daughter's eyes so much like her own. Kamsi, listen to me. What happened to your baby brother was not your fault. It was never your fault. Your papa. She struggled to find words that wouldn't destroy her daughter's image of her father entirely. Your papa made bad choices. Very bad choices. But none of this is because of you. Can I come home now, Mama? Please. Yes, baby. You're coming home right now. They returned to Lagos 3 days later, moving into a new apartment that the women's rights organization had helped secure. A modest but safe two-bedroom in Ikeja, far from the Ikoyi mansion and its terrible memories. Chioma threw herself into rebuilding their lives. She enrolled Kamsi in a new school, one where she could start fresh without the weight of her parents' scandal. She began therapy, not because anyone said she was crazy, but because she knew she needed help processing the trauma. And slowly, painfully, she began to heal. But the outside world was not finished with their story. The EFCC investigation into Chidi's finances moved forward rapidly. AO's team uncovered even more evidence of fraud. Contracts worth hundreds of millions of naira that had been awarded to fake companies. Money siphoned from public projects meant to build schools and hospitals. The scale of Chidi's corruption was staggering. He didn't just steal from the government, AO explained to Chioma during one of their meetings. He stole from the people. Children who should have had new classrooms are still sitting under trees because Chioma Okafor took the money meant for their schools. That's who your husband really was. The words hurt, even though Chioma knew they were true. She had loved a monster without knowing it. The trial when it came was sensational. All of Lagos followed it, on television, on social media, in newspapers. Chidi's defense crumbled under the weight of evidence. His expensive lawyers couldn't explain away the bank records, the emails, the testimony of accomplices who turned against him in exchange for lighter sentences. And then came the revelation that shocked even Chioma. Ngozi Adelik, or Ngozi Ekwensi, as her real name turned out to be, had been working with Chidi all along. She wasn't just a mistress. She was his accomplice in the money laundering scheme. She'd seduced him, yes, but with a purpose. To gain access to his accounts, his connections, his secrets. And when she had what she needed, she'd planned to disappear with millions, leaving Chidi to take the fall. She's done this before, Amara revealed. 4 times in 5 years. Seduce a wealthy man, learn his business, then steal everything and vanish. She would have done it to Chidi too, except you fought back, Chioma. You exposed him before she could finish her con. Chioma didn't know whether to laugh or cry at the irony. Chidi had destroyed their family for a woman who was planning to destroy him. When the verdict came, it was swift and merciless. Chioma Okafor, guilty on 12 counts of fraud, money laundering, and corruption. Sentence: 15 years in Kirikiri Maximum Security Prison. Ngozi Ekwensi, guilty on 8 counts of fraud and conspiracy. Sentence: 10 years in the same prison. Mrs. Okafor, who had been charged as an accessory for helping to hide Chidi's assets, received 3 years and a massive fine that wiped out much of the family's remaining wealth. Chioma watched the sentencing on television from her small apartment, Kamsi asleep beside her. She felt no joy, no triumph, only a profound sadness for everything that had been lost. Her son, who would never draw breath. Her marriage, which had been built on lies. Her innocence, shattered beyond repair. But she also felt something else. Relief. It was finally over. 6 months later, Chioma stood in front of a small congregation at a community church in Ikeja. Not as a victim but as a survivor. The women's rights organization had asked her to speak about her experience, to help other women who were trapped in abusive marriages. I know many of you are afraid, she said, her voice steady now, stronger than it had ever been. Afraid to leave, afraid to speak up, afraid that no one will believe you. I was afraid too. But I learned something through all of this pain. Your life is worth more than your suffering. Your children deserve to see you strong, not broken. And you have more power than you think. In the audience sat women of all ages. Young brides with fresh bruises hidden under makeup, middle-aged mothers who'd endured decades of abuse, elderly grandmothers who'd survived but never healed. They listened, some crying, some nodding, all of them seeing themselves in Chioma's story. I won't lie to you, Chioma continued. It's hard. Some days I wake up and the grief is so heavy I can barely breathe. I think about my son, the baby I never got to hold. I think about the years I wasted on a man who never valued me. And I get angry, so angry that I want to scream. She paused, wiping away a tear. But then I look at my daughter. I look at Kamsi, who is thriving now, who laughs again, who tells me every day that she's proud of me. And I remember why I fought. Not for revenge, although justice was sweet. Not for money, although we're rebuilding our lives. I fought because I refused to let evil win. I refused to let my daughter grow up thinking that love means accepting abuse. The audience erupted in applause, but Chioma raised her hand for silence. There's something else I need to say. Something I've been struggling with. She took a deep breath. I visited Chidi in prison last month. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even Adiz, sitting in the front row, looked shocked. Chioma hadn't told her about the visit. I didn't go because I forgive him, Chioma said quickly. I don't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I went because I needed to see him as he really is. Not the man I thought I married, not the monster who haunted my nightmares, but just a human being who made terrible choices and is now paying for them. She closed her eyes, remembering that visit. The gray walls, the smell of disinfectant and despair. Chidi sitting across from her in his prison uniform, looking 10 years older than the last time she'd seen him. He'd cried. He'd apologized. He'd said all the words she'd once longed to hear. I was a fool, Chioma. I destroyed the best thing in my life. If I could take it back, if I could bring our son back. But Chioma had stopped him. You can't. And I didn't come here for your apologies. I came to tell you that I'm done carrying the weight of what you did. That's yours to carry now. I'm moving forward with my life, and you have no place in it anymore. Did he say anything? Someone in the audience called out. Chioma smiled sadly. He said he understood. And for the first time in our marriage, I think he was telling the truth. After her speech, women lined up to talk to her, to share their stories, to ask for advice. Chioma listened to each one, offering what wisdom she could, making referrals to lawyers and therapists, reminding them that they were not alone. As the crowd dispersed, Pastor Funmi approached her. That was powerful, my dear. You found your calling. What do you mean? You're a warrior now, Chioma. You've been through the fire and emerged stronger. Use that strength to help others. Chioma nodded slowly, the idea taking root in her mind. Yes, she could do that. She could turn her pain into purpose. 1 year after the assault that changed her life, Chioma stood in front of a newly opened center. The Kamsi Foundation for Domestic Violence Survivors, named after her daughter and funded by the restitution money recovered from Chidi's seized assets. It was a place of healing, offering free legal services, counseling, safe housing, and job training for women escaping abuse. Adiz had left her law firm to run the legal department. Mama Nkechi oversaw the kitchen, feeding the women who arrived with nothing. And Pastor Funmi led weekly support groups, helping women rebuild their faith and confidence. Ao Mensa, now a close friend, had helped them navigate the bureaucracy to get the foundation approved. You're changing lives, Chioma, he'd told her at the opening ceremony. Your story is giving hope to thousands of women who thought there was no way out. But it was Kamsi's speech that brought tears to everyone's eyes. My mama is the bravest person I know, the 8-year-old said, standing on a small platform, reading from a paper she'd written herself. She was hurt very badly, and she lost my baby brother, which made me very sad. But she didn't give up. She fought for me, and she fought for other women too. When I grow up, I want to be just like her, strong and kind and brave. Chioma hugged her daughter tight, overwhelmed with emotion. This child, this beautiful resilient child, was worth every battle, every tear, every moment of fear. As the celebration continued, Chioma took a quiet moment alone in the center's memorial garden, where a small plaque bore the inscription, "In loving memory of baby boy Okafor. Your brief life sparked a revolution of justice and healing. You are forever loved." She placed a single white rose beneath the plaque and whispered, "I did it, my son. I kept your sister safe. I made sure your father faced justice. And I turned my pain into something beautiful. Rest now, my baby. Mama's got this." 2 years later, Chioma sat across from Chidi one final time. He had 6 months left on his sentence, reduced for good behavior and for testifying against several corrupt officials who'd been part of his schemes. He looked different, humbler, quieter, broken in a way that might actually be real. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I know I don't deserve even a moment of your time." "You're right. You don't. But Kamsi asked me to come. She wanted to know if you were okay." Chidi's eyes filled with tears. "How is she?" "She's wonderful. She's top of her class. She's in the drama club, she has friends. She's happy, Chidi. Despite everything you put her through, she's happy. Can I see her? When I get out?" Chioma considered this carefully. "If you prove that you've truly changed, If you complete therapy and stay clean from whatever demons drove you to destroy our family, then maybe Kamsi can have supervised visits with her father. But that's her choice, not mine. And it's years away from happening. She stood to leave, but Chidi reached out, not touching her, just extending his hand in a gesture of desperate pleading. Chioma, I know I can never make this right. But I need you to know, I regret it. Every day, every hour I regret what I did. The baby, the assault, the betrayal. If I could trade places, if I could be the one who died instead of our son. Stop, Chioma said firmly. Your regret doesn't change anything. It doesn't bring him back. It doesn't erase my scars. And it certainly doesn't absolve you. You'll carry this guilt for the rest of your life, Chidi. That's your burden, not mine. I've already forgiven you. You have? He asked, shocked. Yes. Not for you, for me. Because I refuse to let bitterness poison the rest of my life. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It doesn't mean I trust you. It just means I'm free from the anger that was eating me alive. She walked to the door, then paused. Ngozi contacted me, from prison. She wanted to apologize too. Chidi's face hardened. What did you say to her? Nothing. I didn't respond. Because unlike you, she doesn't even deserve my forgiveness. She was a predator, and you were her willing victim. You both got what you deserved. As Chioma left the prison for the last time, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. This chapter was finally, truly closed. No more prison visits. No more looking back. Only forward now. On what would have been her lost son's 3rd birthday, Chioma gathered her family and friends at the memorial garden. Kamsi, now 10 years old, read a poem she'd written. I never met my brother, but I know he's watching from above. Mama says he made her stronger, filled our lives with hope and love. Though Papa made mistakes so great, and hurt us in so many ways, Mama chose a different fate. She turned our darkness into days of grace. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. As they released white balloons into the Lego sky, Chioma felt peace settle over her like a warm embrace. Her phone buzzed with a message from Ao. Just saw your interview on CNN. You're going international. Chioma. The world needs to hear your story. She smiled. Yes, she would share her story. Not for fame or recognition, but because somewhere right now, a woman was suffering in silence, believing there was no way out. That woman needed to know she was wrong. There was always a way out. There was always hope. There was always the possibility of redemption. Chioma Okafor had learned this the hard way. But she'd learned it well. And she would spend the rest of her life making sure no woman ever felt as alone, as powerless, as broken as she once had. Because sometimes the people who've been through hell make the best guides for others trying to find their way out. 5 years after the assault that nearly killed her, Chioma stood on a stage at the African Women's Leadership Conference in Nairobi, Kenya, addressing an audience of 3,000 women from across the continent. I was once told that my worth was measured by my marriage, by my ability to keep my husband happy, by how well I could suffer in silence, she said, her voice carrying through the conference hall. But I learned something crucial. Your worth is not determined by anyone else's treatment of you. You are valuable simply because you exist. Behind her on the screen flashed the logo of the Kamsi Foundation, which now operated in 6 African countries and had helped over 10,000 women escape domestic violence. Some of you are in situations that seem impossible right now. Some of you think you have no options, no resources, no hope. But I'm standing here as living proof that you can survive, you can heal, and you can thrive. Not despite your trauma, but because you refuse to let it define you. She glanced off stage, where Kamsi, now 13 and volunteering at the foundation, gave her a thumbs up. It won't be easy. The road ahead will test you in ways you can't imagine. You'll face judgment, betrayal, setbacks. But you'll also discover strength you never knew you had. You'll find allies in unexpected places. And you'll realize that your scars are not signs of weakness, they're badges of honor, proof that you fought and you won. As the audience rose in a standing ovation, Chioma thought about all the women she'd helped over the years. The ones who'd escaped with nothing but the clothes on their backs. The ones who'd fought for custody of their children. The ones who'd rebuilt their lives from scratch. Each one a warrior. Each one a survivor. Just like her. The little girl from Enugu who married above her station and paid the price. She was gone now, transformed into a woman who knew her worth, who demanded respect, who refused to be silenced. Chidi Okafor had tried to break her. Instead, he'd forged her into something unbreakable. And for that, though she would never thank him, she was grateful. Because the woman she'd become was worth every trial, every tear, every moment of terror that had led her here. And that's the end of Chioma's journey from victim to victor. What lessons have you learned from her story? Comment below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this powerful tale of resilience with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for watching K Smart's Mythic Tales. Until next time, remember, your story isn't over yet. Keep fighting. Keep believing. Keep rising. The end.